Chile 2006, Part 10, San Pedro de Atacama. The afternoon excursion took us to the Salt Mountains, Cordillera de la Sal. A few million years ago there used to be sea here, which in the meantime retreated, or rather its bottom was lifted up, so that the salt has remained, as well as other minerals, and there is also the sand and the rocks. From there I could also see volcano Licancabur, 5,916 meters above sea level, which is located at the border between Chile and Bolivia, and on the other side of which is Laguna Verde. From the point at the Salt Mountains where we made the stop, we could see in which direction the Moon Valley was, since we planned to visit it later, as well as Salar de Atacama, which was in Sneja's and my program for the following day. Still, we first went to the Valley of Death, Valle de la Muerte. One of the stories that tells of the reasons why this valley has been named so says that it was on account of a translation error. Namely, some Belgian came here back in the day and said that the valley reminded him of Mars, the way he imagined it to be, since there was a lot of red color. As he spoke French, somebody interpreted his Mars as death, French word mort, and the valley has been stuck with the name. By the way, numerous excursions are organized in this valley for the lovers of sandboarding, which is in fact surfing down a sand dune, since there are sections here with exquisitely fine sand. Then we headed for the Moon Valley, Valle de la Luna. The Moon Valley is a part of the Flamenco's National Reserve. In order to get to this valley, we partially followed the new asphalt road by which we had come from Antofagasta the day before. We passed by rocky hills, the tops of which were white, but rather than snow, this was all salt. First we stopped to visit a small cave. In order to get to it, it is necessary to go through a narrow passage between the rocks. A good share of those rocks is not made of proper stone, but rather this is salt that has come up to the surface. This is how it goes. The water that brings the salt in a capillary manner gets to the surface, then it evaporates while the salt remains. Over time, the salt crystallizes, and it can create even some large chunks that resemble quartz, which they of course aren't. After the visit to the cave, we walked along a flat section that leads through a small gorge, but it was more or less a repetition of the same scenery, so we soon got back to the vehicle. In our minivan we entered further into the Moon Valley, in which large areas were covered by sand that fills up the space between barren rocks and elevations. Although the Moon Valley is a part of the Flamenco's National Reserve, there are actually no flamingos here, or any other animal or life for that matter. The guide told us that this was a rare place on earth where literally no living creature resides. It's not only just the question of hot sand, but of this enormous quantity of salt. Admittedly, every now and then an owl may be seen bringing here its catch it has hunted elsewhere, and then it descends in the valley only in order to devour its prey, and then it flies away again. The next stop was at the place called the Three Marys, Tres Marias. There are a few smaller upright rocks, the shape of which, through plentiful imagination, reminds of women who pray, hold a baby, or kneel. Near this site there is also an old, now abandoned salt mine. There we also climbed a small elevation in order to get a better view of the surrounding area. It was very windy that day, and the wind was strong enough almost to the point of moving us. In addition, in a few spots here we could see solid, polished and transparent salt crystals that we walked on. Then we started to go back, but with another very attractive stop. Namely, at some point, like the visitors traveling in other vehicles, we got free time to climb a higher elevation that had 3 good viewpoints from which it was nice to watch the sunset. It was also possible to walk over the crest of a large sand dune and go to another elevation, but the two of us decided to go to the point that was farthest away from our vehicle and the road. The simple landscape elements were again magnificently beautiful and additionally accentuated by the colors that went from white to different nuances of brown, with additions of red hues and the infinite and perfect blue sky. All of this was strengthened by the sun that was setting and shedding its horizontal rays, emphasizing the colors and creating long shadows, thus rendering a dramatic effect to the entire scene. And then the sun went down and we slowly went back to the minibus and eventually to San Pedro. The day was great and we were overwhelmed with impressions. On the other hand, the day was also exceptionally long, so soon after our return to the village we went to bed. The next day we had another trip planned, but it was all significantly easier as we didn't have to get up at the crack of dawn. In addition, the van was rather big and comfortable, and the guide was quite nice, so everything was to our liking. The idea was to visit Salar de Atacama, a couple of altiplano lakes, as well as a couple of villages. First we went to the sector of Soncor at Ley Chaxa within Salar de Atacama, which is situated at around 2,300 meters above sea level. This is the third largest salt lake in the world, after Uyuni in Bolivia and Salt Lake in the USA. But this is not all sodium chloride, that is kitchen salt. There is also a lot of potassium, boron, magnesium and lithium. According to our guide, some 40% of the world deposits are located here. At the place where we stopped, the surroundings appeared as if covered in some kind of debris. That was all salt. Rather dirty, but salt nonetheless. Between these sections there was a flat path which we followed in order to visit the salar. At one point we came across a rather big depression filled with water. The guide collected some of that water in her hands and showed us the tiny little vertebrates that live in the water and that serve as food for flamingos. Those tiny animals have in them beta-carotene, the same one that is found in carrots and tomatoes, and this is precisely what gives flamingos their characteristic pink color. Here we saw two types of flamingos, the Chilean and the Andean ones. There is also a third version that may be seen here, and that is the James's flamingo. Roughly speaking, the differences that are the most easy to observe are linked to the fact that the Andean flamingo has a black beak and black tail. The Chilean one has a black beak and a pink tail, while the James's flamingo is all pink. After our visit to the Salt Lake, we drove uphill, and after a while we reached the altitude of around 4,200 meters, at which lakes Miscanthi and Meñiques are located. The vistas were breathtaking, and it is a real pity that one cannot go there any time the heart desires. Lake Miscanthi is the bigger one, and it covers the area of 15 square kilometers. Its surface is at 4,120 meters above sea level. In winter, it may happen that the entire surface of the lake freezes. This is not the case when we were there, and we could enjoy in yet another gorgeous example of effortless beauty. On the left-hand side, from the point at which we stood and admired the lake, there was volcano Miscanthi, which the lake had been named after. From the road, where the vehicle was parked, we followed a path in order to get to the shore of the lake. On the shore, we sat on the ground, and for a while, and other than taking photos, we spent some time in silence while enjoying the landscape around us. In addition to the beautiful scenery from my visits to Altiplano, the high-altitude desert plain in Peru, Bolivia and Chile, I have particularly kept in my mind the nuance of the blue sky that may be seen there. To my mind, this is the most beautiful blue color, and I liked it so much, I enjoyed it so much that while I was looking at it, in those moments of abandonment, I felt an intensive desire to become that blue color. Still, no matter how much I filmed with my photo and video cameras, it is impossible to convey the intensity of the blueness and the strength of impression when you are vaulted by that purer than pure firmament. The name Meñiques also refers both to a volcano and a lake that lies beside it. The surface of the lake is 1.5 square kilometers, meaning that it is considerably smaller than Lake Miscanthi. We were not allowed to go to the very shore because there were some birds that breed there. From the elevation at which we were standing, it was possible to see something that appeared like small patches of piled grass that protruded from the shallow water near the shore. Those were the nests of the birds made of algae, and for this reason people are not allowed to go near the lake in order not to disturb the birds. The reason why the birds nest right here is that this lake is surrounded by higher ground, as if it were in a deeper hole, which makes it protected against the impact of the wind and coldness. While standing there, we also saw some vicuñas grazing calmly near the lake.